thank y'all. So we are very lucky to have J.K. Yarborough with us. He's gonna talk to us about burning on Yarborough Ranch, the stories I've heard. J.K. Yarborough is a 5th generation cattle rancher on Yarborough Ranches in Geneva, Florida. He attended the University of Florida for animal science and agronomy before starting his current position at IFAS, Livestock and Natural Resources Extension Agent for Orange and Seminole counties. Welcome.
Catch me up? Yeah, sounds good, I think. All right. Well, thank you all for having me. So like Sammy said, my name is J.K. Yarborough, and I'm the Livestock and Natural Resources Extension Agent for Orange and Seminole counties, but I'm not here. I'm here at a professional capacity, but also at not totally professional capacity because we wanted to have some speakers come and talk on a more personal level about landowners and their relations with prescribed burning and forest services, that whole aspect of it. So I wanted to have some of my family come and speak because they know far more than I do in terms of stories, things of that nature, but scheduling just didn't really work out. And so I'm here in their stead, more or less. But I know a few things. So real quick, like Sammy said, I'm a 5th generation cattle operator out of Geneva, Florida. My family actually started, we have records of at least kind of go back to, and by records, I mean oral stories. We don't have anything written down, it seems like, anymore. But we started out in that I can know of in Chiliota, which is a little bit further south of Geneva, where our family kind of got a bit of their start. But then part of our families started doing some nefarious activities in the area. And my side of the family just wouldn't stand for such nefarious activities, such as running moonshine whiskey. And so we moved over to Geneva. So that side of the family became some of the original butchers for the village of Geneva at the time, had a house. And I think another quick intro about myself is some of you have probably already asked yourself, and you're probably texting Robert, like, there's this guy up here named J.K. Yarborough, are you related to him? Yeah, that's my cousin. So he'll probably be in the chat box as well, giving some comments and telling me there's a booger at my nose or something from looking in the camera and things like that. And he'll probably throw some comments and stuff in there as well. And he knows a lot more of these stories as well, but he probably knows where the tree is actually, where we used to hang up the carcasses that we would butcher, on the oak tree that's in there in Geneva. But eventually the town grew a little bit more, and they got tired of the smell of the operation being right there, because this is the time before refrigeration. So we kept palm fronds hanging on the carcasses to keep flies and stuff off of it, and that's how we preserved meat back then. But the town got tired of the smell, and so my ancestor said, fine, then we'll move. And so he did. He moved right down the street to the end of the road where the cemetery was, because he said he didn't think those people would complain about the smell so much. And so that's how we started as butchers, and then we started to work for the Lee family in the area, helping them manage their cattle and their property a little bit, till we were able to build up enough funds to buy some property of our own there in Geneva off Snow Hill Road. Ran down the length of I call it the creek, Econ River, I suppose, technically, kind of like a Hatchie River. I call it the creek because it butts up to what is actually the river, St. John's River. So whenever I say the creek, talk about the Econ, I talk about the river, talk about St. John's River. Bought that property. And since then we were able to first started running hogs. Actually, we kept hogs in a very similar fashion in the way that we run cattle today. Allegedly, we worked them off of horseback and everything else. If you ever have ridden a horse around hogs, you know that hogs and horses don't get along very well. Horses can't stand the smell of a hog, and so they usually act up a little bit. So how they managed to do it, I don't know, but they did. But eventually we moved into cattle, and that's kind of where we're at today. Still have cattle operation out there off Snow Hill Road. It's a little bit reduced in size, but a good part of it, like I mentioned, went both in north and south of the Econ Creek, and it went all the way up to the St. John's River. So a lot of that country was still considered native lands. Part of it is in improved pastures, but a good part of it is still native. And when we had that property, we burned to be able to do a lot of things with it. burning, like I said, we stopped burning as I was kind of in end of middle school into high school. So I didn't get to see a lot of it. I got to see experience a good bit of it, but not in my like more formative years. And not to mention, like I said, I don't have a lot of the stories that my dad and my uncle and Robert could probably tell you. But the truth of the matter is that some of those stories probably don't need to be said in this room. Could probably incriminate people, possibly. So we want to make sure we keep it all kosher, you know. So some of those stories probably don't need to see the light of day anymore. But some of the stories that I do remember, you know, growing up, well, the reason why we burned was, y'all know the reasons, but there's multiple reasons why. We were cattle owners, and so in the wintertime, we burned those switchgrass ponds because whenever that regrowth would come back, it'd give those cattle something to eat in a time when we particularly needed some forage when nothing else was growing. So we burned that switchgrass off in the wintertime. That grown switchgrass, they're not going to touch, but as it burns off, give it a couple of weeks, it's going to grow back a little bit, and they will go to town on that regrowth. It's higher in nutrition. It's a great source of protein for because it's young growth. It's high in protein, which is actually one of our main deficiencies in nutrients during that time of the year is protein. So it really works out for our cattle that way. Also, because we averaged about a 5-year burn management structure. And so as cattle owners, we did everything off horseback still. So burning off those switchgrass ponds kept down a lot of the second tier growth. So that way, whenever we did go look for cattle and things like that, we made it a little bit more manageable off horseback, whereas if you just let it grow up, you can't really do it as much. We also managed a hunting club there because of that. The burning managed for whitetail a little bit better, but also we use the burn as a method of hunting as well. And that's one of the few things I do remember from my experiences burning. One, as a young person, seeing fire like that, that's definitely impactful. I'm sure a lot of you have had a similar experience, and it's probably what got you here today. But it was, you know, seeing fire like that. And I remember it's hunting season and we're hunting, we burn off a part, and then a couple of days later we would go hunt somewhere else. But you see smoke drifting up, then all of a sudden you have to shift gears and go from hunting mode into, better call somebody to get the tractor mode because that fire caught back up kind of situation. And so I always remember like always looking on the horizon, looking for some new smoke for something that may have started back up, because we had that happen a couple of times. But also by burning the hunting club, you know, my dad would start on one end, and he would give me my shotgun and say, all right, follow this break and just don't turn back, just keep going. And if something pops out, you know, it's hunting season, if it's adequate, you know, have at it. And so I always remember, you know, walking down fire trail with my shotgun. It was a completely new experience to me. You never knew what was going to pop out. And of course, usually things would pop out behind you. So you wouldn't get it in time, whether a rabbit or a buck or something like that. But it was a really great experience. Of course, like I said, all sorts of different stories out there that I'm not totally positive on. Robert can probably tell you more about it. We used to burn off of horseback. Like I mentioned, we do all of our cattle work off horseback. So just being horseback is part of our family life. In fact, my dad says that we keep cattle for the purpose of giving us an excuse to ride our horses. And so we would burn off horseback as well, lighting matches. We would sometimes, of course, use drips off buggies and things like that, but we would also go off horseback, and that fire would catch up to you kind of quick. And I don't know the exact story, but somehow or another, my dad has a melted slicker on the back of his saddle because he decided to play around and get a little bit too close to the fire, and it actually caught up. When I say slicker, that's the rain poncho cowboys have on the back of their saddles. So he got probably a little bit too close for that thing to get caught and kind of melt a little bit. We also have some stories of sometimes when the wind shifts. Y'all know all this, I know, but wind shifts and we're out there on foot or off horseback, starting and it's switching back on you, run to the creek. Some instances where my dad and my uncle have had to get into the creek, allow the fire to come over, try to go from one side to the other. There's just a lot of different instances where the burning is a part of our culture, and to see, and like I mentioned that we had stopped burning because a good part of that native lands that we we've sold back to St. John's Water Management District, and so it's under a little bit different management regime right now, and you can see the difference in that there hasn't been burned as frequently, and so there's a lot of more change in that part of the country from what we're used to. A lot more myrtle trees coming up, palm trees, things that just kind of changes that ecosystem in there entirely. Not to mention invasives that have kind of come up in that switchgrass as well. But that's a part of it. So I don't exactly have, like I said, I don't have a whole lot of stories, but I can answer probably a good bit of questions. If anybody has any particular questions or anything like that they've been burning on, or I see what I did there. Any questions about, the way we ran things or what we do, happy to answer them.
Yeah, the question way back here.
Oh, yes.
JK, how react to the fire and the smoke, and would they be useful tool working in the wilderness area?
Yeah, so the question was, how do horses react to smoke and fire, and if they would be a viable tool for wildlife burning, or wildlands burning. I honestly, it depends. Horses react differently. For the most part, they're not too crazy about it. I've always heard, the story of just close your horse's eyes and you can lead them right through the fire because they can't see it. I've never gotten the experience to try and do that. I can't see that being the situation because I'm pretty sure they can feel fire just as well as they can see it. But I think it's a viable tool to go in areas where you can't take other buggies. We just got back last week. Was the Florida Cattlemen's Association held one of their cattle drives. We went from old Melbourne Road north of 192 here, and we went all the way down to Kenansville, Silver Spurs Arena. And so along that path, there were a lot of places that we were able to go because we were on horseback that other people couldn't go. If you go on foot, but it's going to take you a whole lot more time. It's a lot more labor intensive. And so I think it's a viable tool. I think it's probably a good bit more skill involved, doing horsemanship, as well as some liability stuff in there, but I think it could be a viable tool.
Way over there.
Yes, sir.
Animal property.
Yes, sir. So I can't exactly speak to that. Oh, repeat the question. So the question was, having cattle in a native area, they graze and they change the fuel in the area versus non-grazed area. And so what kind of differences do we see in an area that has cattle grazing versus not grazing? I can't exactly speak to that because our areas were open and grazed all the time pretty well. So I've always only seen burns in grazed areas myself. But having cattle in there, it helps a lot. They help reduce some of our woodier species that'll come up. They'll help stomp them down in certain areas. They'll graze them a little bit. I mean, they're foragers, not browsers, so they're not like deer and goats. They'll still munch on it, but not a whole lot. So I don't exactly know. I can't exactly answer your question because I've only seen one side of the equation. I haven't seen the other. Yes, sir.
Do you have any stories of unintended fire or having to take defense against wildfire?
So the question was, do we have any stories about unintended fires or having to take some defensive precautions from a wildfire? We've had unintended fires in the past, not necessarily from burning and have a spot that we weren't intending to burn, catch. Like I said, that kind of goes back to those stories when we were hunting, and I was looking out for fire everywhere or smoke everywhere I could, because to me, that meant we got to hop in the Jeep or the buggy and just explore it to try to get to wherever it was in time. That was a good time to me. I was a kid, I didn't know any better. But we've had, from an agricultural standpoint, we've had some instances where that happens, where you put up hay that's too wet. It's possible for hay to catch on fire, so I'm sure y'all have heard of that. Or microbes inside if hay is put up too wet. Too much microbial activity can create enough heat to be able to combust and catch that hay on fire. We've had that happen. Luckily, we didn't have that hay put into our hay barn. We had it out in the open, actually, and we knew it was wet when we put it up. And it was just we have it cut. It rained on us. There's not much else we can do. We just put it up. And so, look, we've had some hay fires, but luckily it's been a hay field, and so it doesn't really get out of control. As far as defensive from wildfires, I've never, luckily, family takes care of the youth, and so they didn't want to put me in any kind of position like that. But I definitely, like I mentioned, heard stories where we've had instances where we had to run to Econ Creek and hop in it to be able to let stuff blow over and get away from stuff coming your way.
Yeah, question right here.
Tell us a little bit about how you maintain the fence lines for, buildings, grass, and diets.
Mhm.
Are you, herbiciding and this kind of?
Right. So cooking grass, yeah. From an extension standpoint, I hate it, and I don't again, I don't need to tell y'all that by any means. So what we're doing with it, if it's big enough, if it's our, the question was how we manage our fence lines for cooking grass, essentially. Herbicide is our go-to right now. Herbicide, and we haven't tried burning just yet because we don't have any large enough paths, swaths on our fence line to be able to burn. Luckily, knock on wood, where we're at there in Snow Hill, it hasn't really taken root in a lot of our operation because it's improved enough to where a lot of our native space, a lot of our native lands, like again, we don't have access to anymore. But a lot of our improved stuff doesn't have a lot of cooking grass in it just yet. But what bit we do have, we use herbicide.
All right, we got a question online.
What is your stocking rate? How many acres or animals per acre per day?
That's a great question, and I really wish I could give you the answer. So how many?
Repeat the question.
Oh, yes, the question it was agricultural related question. Has stocking, what's our stocking rate? What's our animals per acre per day? Essentially carrying capacity kind of question. I really wish I could answer that question because I'm not the foremost in charge of our operation. So we run roughly about 500 head of cattle now. We used to run about 1,000 when my grandfather was in charge, but we reduced that down to about 700 after he passed away, but be able to maintain our production because he did it kind of the old school way. After changing a few things around, having a breeding season, using some more breeding management and introducing some new genetics, we're able to kind of keep up our same production with 700 head as we were with 1,000. Today we're about down to 500, and we run it on about, give or take, 1,700 acres. So, and it's not all open, but it's pretty dang close to almost being just all open kind of management. So I can't exactly speak to what our stocking rate and all that exactly is right now.
Any other questions from the audience for JK? Raise your hand if so. Anything online then? All right, JK, thank you very much.
Thank you.